Welcome again to a video associated with the People Not Property project. This particular video is associated with recording dates and names of the individuals found on the slave deeds. The next set of columns in our spreadsheet are associated with the month, day, and year of the execution of the particular deed, and a listing of the grantor, the grantee, and the slaves that are listed in that particular document. So going back to the volunteer handbook, the one thing to notice is that we want to record the earliest date. That is, the deed actually could be executed before it was recorded. And so let's say the deed was executed on June 3rd, but it didn't get recorded until July 2nd. We would want to record June 3rd as the date of the deed, and that's what's stated here in the directions here in the volunteer handbook. And so let's just I'll use my example here, June, and I'll page over to the 3rd, and I'll make up a year. Let's see, 1824 as a year. So I would place June as the month, day, and year. It may not be stated. Let's say the day is not stated. Let's say we only have June 1824 with no day stated. In that case, 0. There are no blanks that will appear in your spreadsheet. Numeric data that is not stated would be placed as a 0. Anything else that is not stated, we would say not stated. So in this case, I could have a year, the month wasn't mentioned, or we couldn't read it, and the day was not mentioned. The month wasn't there. You could take a note of this at the very end of the row for this particular document. So I'll put this June back here. And so I have June, and I'll stick with the 3rd for the time being, just as a placeholder so you can see what's taking place. Next, we have the grantor name, the grantee name, and the slaves listed. So back to the handbook, grantors, right? The grantor, that's the person that's deeding it to somebody else. The grantor, we're going to list them last name, comma, first name. If there are multiples, we will separate by a semicolon, and we'll have last name, comma, first name, semicolon, last name, comma, first name. Right. So back to the spreadsheet, we had Thomas Jefferson and George Washington. So I would say Jefferson, comma, Thomas, and if there's multiple, semicolon, and I would have Washington, comma, George, and press enter. And so now I have the information that's there. You'll notice that the size of my cell here, the amount of data I put in, was larger than the cell size itself. Don't let that bother you. You can see that what's there right here at the top, you can see the data that's actually there, right? So because we're going to place information here in the grantee, I'll just garbage information for the time being, and it looks like it's cut off, but it's not, because the information is already there. And if we have the situation where we had a partition in kind, for example, and I just wanted to, I had one name there. Let's make this just Thomas Jefferson. So I'm going to edit this, and I'm just going to have here Thomas Jefferson as if he was the sole grantor. And then I could just put my cursor here, notice that plus sign, and I could copy down. And in all 3 places, I would get Thomas Jefferson. So if I had that situation, I could easily and quickly copy the information, and then I could put the individual grantees' names here as appropriate. So let me delete this information that's here. And we need to have a grantee. So let's go back to the handbook. Grantee, same protocol that's here. It's the individual to whom the ownership is transferred in the deed. Again, last name, comma, first name. Notice it says, if there is more than one grantee listed and they're not a married couple, each grantee will receive a separate line in the spreadsheet. Now, in the earlier video, we talked about partition in kind. We also talked about trustees. If we have a deed of trust, for example, for a debt, you may see multiple individuals listed to whom the debt was owed, but the deed of trust will show one name, the trustee's name, and that's the name that would go in as the grantee, not the variety of people to whom money is owed. And so here we have let's say it's William Smith. So I would put in Smith, comma, William. Let's say that is the person to whom the grantor is granting said property. And so William Smith is there. So we have Thomas Jefferson is the grantor, William Smith is the grantee, and we would have filled in this information. Next would be, who are the slaves that are listed? And so it would not be uncommon for you to see the slaves listed only by first name. And you'll see in the handbook we've got multiple examples here. We've got a multiple grantee situation, the trustee, which is the one grantor, and then here we have 3 different individuals, Let, Ray, and Hannah. And this information shows up in the detailed section at the back end of the handbook. But let's use their names. And I have Let, comma, Ray, Let, semicolon, Ray, semicolon, Hannah. And so I'll go to the spreadsheet and I'll key those in. Slaves, I have Let, semicolon, Ray, semicolon, Hannah, A-H, Hannah. And so those are the slaves that are listed. So we'll have, again, the month, day, and year of the deed, the grantor or grantors plural names, last name, comma, first name, all separated by semicolons. And then we would have the grantee, one grantee per row. Again, if we had partition in kind or partition in trust, we would have multiple grantees. And then the names of the slaves listed. You'll notice here in this example, we've got this one item, Andy, semicolon, Susan, and child. So they're listed here together with a semicolon. We don't have a name for the child. And you'll notice here in a second, we'll talk about the fact that we have ages, however, for the child, but we only have 5 individuals here that are specifically listed. And the child is just and child. If the child had a name, we could have semicolon and then the child's name, and then we'd have the 6 fully delineated individuals. So let's go to the spreadsheet and let's talk about numbers of slaves and their ages. So in the spreadsheet, in that particular case here, we had 3 slaves. And so we would put the number 3 for the number of slaves. And then we have their ages. We have 3 individuals here, and so we should have a corresponding age for each of those. If it's not stated, we would put a 0 for numerical information, 0 as a placeholder for something not being explicitly stated. So Let, in this particular case, we do not have an age for Let. So we just have a 0 as a placeholder, semicolon. This happens to be a mother and 2 children. And so their ages are listed as 5, semicolon, and 2. And that's what we would place. All right, if we had the situation, well, let's go back here and look at the handbook. Here we have 6 individuals. Susan, we do not have any of their ages, and you'll notice all 6 zeros because none of their ages were listed. So 1 age for each individual.